onto the computer.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yep. So, and we're recording tonight. We normally wouldn't record something like this, but there's several people that were actually really keen to come along, and I've got toddler issues, or different bits and pieces going on. So we're just doing a record. So just as a bit of an introduction to the project, the project's called Redesigning Grazing for Drought Resilience. It's been funded by the Tasmanian Drought Hub, and that was a loop through from the Future Drought Fund. So the project is around testing drought resilience, low cost, low risk, profitable grazing. We've been working in this field. We've had several projects in the past, and this is an expansion on that. So as you see that Graham and I are not the shiny side of 21 anymore. So we're really looking to engage other people as a succession plan and as a future for this work. It's incredibly important, and it's got a real head of steam. People are very interested in how to do what we're doing. So the project will involve running paddock scale and smaller safe-to-fail trials, and that's to address the individual problems on the 3 different farms that we've got engaged. Justin's on one of the farms, owns one of the farms up at Toledo in the northeast of the state. There's another on at Evandale. It's a fine wool merino place. And the 3rd place is near Jericho, and that's also a sheep property. And they've got quite individualised type of programs. They're different on each place. So the process that we're using to monitor, one of the things that we'll be doing is monitoring, and that's the biggie that really needs to be transferred. It actually measures the impact of what your management is creating on the farm. It's measurable, and it's replicable, and it's scalable. So, and this process is called landscape function analysis, and it was a process that was developed by Norm Hindley and David Tongway from the CSIRO. Graham's been using this process for, I don't know, a long time now, Graham, haven't you? And we've been using it on all of our trials down here, and it actually gives really clear data on the change in landscape over time. So we're going to be doing some case studies on farms that have gone well through drought in the past, ones that have come out of a drought with ground cover and at a profit, that haven't run themselves into the ground financially. So, yeah, as I said before, we're individualising the support that's needed on each of the 3 farms. Justin's been in a prior project with his cattle in the northeast, and it's looking to roll on from that, because past projects have always just been for 12 months. So if we can roll past trial hosts into projects ahead, into the future, you get a much better outcome, and you get a much better body of data and demonstration sites. So the final place at Evandale, they're looking to improve some of their poorer country, and also get more of a handle. They've been working with us for some time, so they're down the track a bit further. They're not beginners with this, and they're looking at how they can actually use sheep to get through a bigger body of feed, when it's very vegetative and dry. So it's a lot of problem solving in that regard, and also remediating some problem areas. And that's the same with the place at Jericho as well, that they've got barley grass thistle area that they're looking to improve, and so that will just be a paddock scale there. So so our aim is basically transfer knowledge, increase adoption of these practices. So what you'll gain from the program is that there'll be, the physical, the nuts and bolts is a free entry to the workshops and the webinars and the program in general, and support from us to support your learnings. But we haven't run a traineeship program before, but we have been researching other programs, other successful programs, and we personally undertake that we'll support you in your learnings, and be there to support you in whichever way you can, that you need. Sorry. So I'm just going to pass over to Graham now, and he'll just go through a bit more of what you'll learn or engage in.
Thanks, Celia. Before I share my screen, just because I can talk underwater, is there any questions you've got at the moment? Anything you'd really like to sort of cover off on? I was going to talk about the sort of monitoring we do, sort of a bit of an idea on what we think the minimum involvement and engagement from you guys would be, but like as always, open to negotiation, and sort of any specific areas. So we'll be talking, this project is really about restoring soil health by managing the soil surface, and we'll be teaching you the science of soil surfaces, and also not only will we be monitoring, we'll be doing what would be possible suggested corrective action if you're working with other people or on your own property, so that you're actually closing that loop. So not only are you getting data on how good it is for stability, water infiltration, and nutrient cycling, you're suggesting possible changes and then investigating them through small trials that I've pinched from a guy called Dave Snowden. He calls them safe to fail. So because it's so complex, you've got to do trials to explore it. So that was what I was going to do. Is any questions before I start and get going? Oh, well, I'll have a bit of a bash, but jump in, because otherwise I'll go too far, and I'll only do a little bit. Do you see that? So that'll be recorded, won't it, Celia?
Yes, we can see that.
Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, so this is funded by the Australian government through the Future Drought Fund and through the Tas Farm Innovation Hub, and that includes TIA and UTAS and the NRMs and a few other organisations. So I sort of accredited with Holistic Management International and Savory Institute, work with Celia at RANT and have my own training and things like that, but also do farm myself in East Gippsland. So I try and get a bit of a direction of where we're heading. So we'll be talking about increasing biodiversity through increasing landscape function. So this is about turning around the ship of agriculture. So we're producing food that restores ecosystem health. So that's the real focus of it. I tend to be up the extreme end of that sort of management. So I don't think we've got a great deal of time left. So I really go hard at it and let people, so I try and stretch them as hard. If you did this, it'd be restored in 12 months. That mightn't be feasible, or you mightn't have the ability to do that at the moment, and let them move back. But some people, like I don't back off very much, and people think that I'm saying there's only one way. What I'm trying to do is say this way works. We've shown it works. So Celia and I have worked in Brazil, and I've worked in the USA, Canada, Mongolia, Somaliland, so all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's sort of just dropping names, sorry. But yeah, so the way we think about it is that you need money and people, so low risk profit and high well-being scores for people, nested within land that's increasing in biodiversity. So, and we push that increase in biodiversity by increasing landscape function. This is sort of what landscape function looks like. It's really, it is really the science of the soil surface. If you want to change the stability or reduce erosion, if you want to infiltrate water, if you want to infiltrate water, and if you want nutrient cycling, you've got to change. These are the main ones, but there's like another 5 of these. So you've got to have the ground covered for it to be stable, either with soil annuals or perennial grass litter. If you want it to infiltrate water, you've got to have as much as you can of each hectare covered with the bases of mature perennial grasses. And it's got to also have this decomposing or composting litter between the perennial grasses, and you need some surface roughness to slow the water down and allow it to infiltrate. So this is all peer reviewed. I started using it when I was working at the Victorian DPI, so that I didn't have to argue. So I went looking, and I'd heard about this, and then I'd been exposed to it, and I went back to sort of David and got trained by Peter Ant from Sydney Uni and Dave Tongway in how to use it. All the procedures and stuff are on the internet, and I'll make sure to include that so you can click on the link, because there sort of will be a bit of pre-prep and things like that, how this works. It's all very straightforward. We carry a manual and just sort of score these, so they're all pretty easily scoreable. What percentage over a metre is covered with the bases of perennial grass, and you can just estimate that against a transect on a ruler, on a tape. So it's all very straightforward. This is the full one, so this is with all the soil texture and stuff. So typically, if I'm working with farmers, I only use the short version, the simplified, but we'll be going through this. But again, as I said, it's all very doable and very easy to do. I'll just skip that out of the way. So any comments or questions on that? Any thoughts? Nothing? Good. Don't be shy.
So how long would one of these processes take to do, Graham?
Thank you, Silly. Would take if you're going really fast, you can sort of do an hour and a half. So if we were doing the training on it, it might be a couple of hours, and then like just going back. But as you get more and more practiced with it, and the land gets healthier, it gets quicker and quicker. So, typically we do 2 or 3 a day when you're talking to a farmer, and also explaining what it's about and all that sort of stuff. So it's just really, it's really nice way, because it gives you enough feedback to suggest that corrective action, because you've got this detail and you haven't got consolidated data or an index, like on that side, their index, but you've got each of these and you can say, oh, it's lacking litter, or it's lacking decomposition of the litter, or, you can start to see there's not enough mature perennial grasses, so you're going to have to promote germination by using the animals at high stock density and long enough recoveries that you start to increase that. So all those relationships of how we apply grazing animals to the land can restore the land. And this is sort of the window, I think of it as, to how do you actually link what you do with the animals to how do we increase that land health, that landscape function, so that it starts to cycle and we get, the whole suite of decomposing fungi and the whole shoot and match, and then and keep continually improving it. Celia's got some great results of changing from sort of giving up on water infiltration at 5 minutes to sort of getting 19 seconds for water infiltration. So 25 mils of moisture doing an infiltration, and it just sort of falls through the soil. And so these mature perennial grasses act like great funnels, and then you've got the litter breaking the drops, and then you've got the decomposition activating the nutrient cycle, so you don't have to use nitrogen fertilizer, and you switch from using having nitrates and ammonium in the soil, and you start to switch that so that you've got organic nitrogen that doesn't leak into the waterways and cause sort of algal blooms, and you're holding the phosphorus in place, and there's a whole heap of stuff. It's just that's one of the reasons we're so passionate about it, is that it can decouple you from inputs if you want. So what I typically start with farmers is they're more interested in the nutrient cycling and how it impacts their fertilizer budget. And then I run that, and we put in the safe to fail trials. So small areas at the boundaries of what's possible, and we just demonstrate how quickly the land regenerates. So the property will be running the training in July on. They've got sort of 3, 6, 9, and 12 months recoveries, and you can clearly see the impact of those different recoveries. You start to, it's highly complex what's happening in the soil, and this allows you, through understanding landscape function and safe to fail trials, to untangle it and start to get glimpses of what it can. We've turned, within 12 months, desert in Somaliland back to full grassland just by using grazing animals. So it's that, I was going to say, I hope I'm not over promising, but I don't think I can. The difference is so stark and different. So it's all peer reviewed. If you increase that nutrient cycling, you increase nitrogen, carbon, the whole shooting match of soil and phosphorus, and we've got all the data on that. I'll be providing training on sort of how the way you apply those animals relates, the way you apply those animals goes through to increasing that function, which then leads through to increasing biodiversity. So it's really interesting that, even though it's only sort of talking about reducing erosion, increasing water infiltration, and increasing nutrient cycling, that the management that increases those also increases the diversity of the perennial grasses and the life in the soil and the whole thing. So, most people just don't understand litter. I've been trying to use this graph, but I've got a group that I work with that say that it doesn't work for them. But all I've done is I've kept the perennial grasses the same, the soil surface roughness the same, and the ground cover the same, apart from whether there's litter or not between the perennial grasses in that intertussock space. So you need big perennials, and then you need decomposing litter in the middle. And then this is what it's like with no litter. These are the scores. These have all been peer reviewed. It's just a percentage. So it's an index percentage. It's not, it doesn't tell you, it needs to be ground truth by each area for sort of what does 30% infiltration mean for the rate of water and stuff. But as you put litter there and cover the ground between the perennial grasses, and this is on a grassland that's higher than most grasslands, you increase the stability because you've got more ground cover, you increase the water infiltration, you start to increase that. Then you start to get slight decomposition of the litter, it increases again. Then you get moderate decomposition, which is visible fungal attack, it goes again, and then there's a higher one that you don't see very often in grasslands, and it goes again. But we're starting to get there. I'll just skip over the next slide. All right, am I going reasonable pace? Not too fast, not too slow? Any feedback? It's all right. I'll just skip through that. We'll talk about that. I keep saying to farmers, this graph's a little bit, this is from ABARES. This is farm debt. It's just going through the roof. It's just going berserk. This is gross farm, which they always quote's going really well. But this is net farm. This is what the farmers keep. And it's forecast to drop to one of the lowest levels since, I think, back in the 2000s. So it's not going to be pretty if the drought comes through, with rising input costs and lower rainfall. And I'm still thinking. And I just thought I'd put this in because it always is interesting to me that the cropping is going to be the one that takes all the pain. It's going to drop from sort of just over 55 billion to below 45 billion, whereas grazing, livestock just keeps trundling along a bit. So it's going to be a big drop. and most of the cropping people are going to wear it. So back to the safe to fail trials. What they do is they promote change. We've done a lot of work, and what we find is that people chase the safe to fail trials because they're almost running away from them. They're improving so quickly. They start to chase them with the controls. Like when we're doing a scientific, evaluation, we want them to keep the management the same. They see this area improving and it drags them along, which is what we want and what I've always used them for. But when you're doing research, you're trying to keep them the same. They provide reference sites so that you can actually go back and say, this is what this land should look like, and this is the potential of this land. So that's a really important thing, something to monitor towards. That helps you with what infrastructure that you're going to need. That teaches people to monitor, and also most of the annual forby weeds, so you cape weed and thistles and the whole thing, you learn how to control them by creating the conditions that push them out. So you create such dense perennial grasslands that there's no gaps for those forby annual type weeds. So people love that, so that they can actually, how can you use your management to control weeds rather than herbicides and inputs and costs? So yeah, so it's sort of this is what Celia's been doing on the East Coast. So that's Celia holding just the soil. It was a sandy, crumbly soil, sort of 15 months ago. And within 15 months, it goes to this beautiful structured, worms, the whole lot. So you're getting lots of activity of all the critters sort of stirring up and incorporating all that litter. And so you've got that decomposing litter sitting on the soil surface, and then you've got all the life in the soil dragging it down and opening up pores, and that's what does all that water infiltration and nutrient cycling and stuff. So this is typically what this project that we've just done, so on that same farm. And so you start to see the differences between this was the control, this was 12 months recovery at high stock density and high utilization, all the different 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, 15 months. I keep thinking I should have ordered it some 3 months through to 15. So yeah, I did it on the numbers of the paddocks, but I should have done it on the time. But yeah, it's that sort of thing. And then you can see that this one here actually decreased in water infiltration when it was getting 3 months between recovery between grazing events. So we talk about what happened there, and the litter's less lignified and less I was going to say connective tissue, but that's meat. It's got a lower carbon nitrogen ratio, so it composts really quickly on the soil surface. And because it composts on the soil surface and bears the ground out, the water doesn't infiltrate the same as these ones that had 6 months old litter that was deeper, but also more lignified, so it had more structure and was more resilient to being chewed up by the soil. So you need to know these type of things and what happens. So this was last year, like during the La Nina. So the season doesn't get any better than that on the east coast of Tasmania, down near Triabunna, but it still wasn't long enough to maintain that. Our sort of rough definition of regenerative in RANT, or in Regenerative Ag Network of Tasmania, is that you've got to continually increase that landscape function. So this one's actually degrading for water infiltration and as well as for nutrient cycling. So all of these, the phosphorus would have become more available. You would have had shifted nitrogen from mineralizable to organic, so it didn't leak. There's a whole heap of things that happen and change. And it was really good that the scientists recognized that the importance of this, and and that it was challenging. I just like that expression. It challenged their underpinning guidelines for grazing, rest, duration and frequency, litter production, legume content, and just that nutrient and energy flow from pasture to livestock. So I really like it that we do some challenging things. So I might stop there, Celia. I've got the graphs and things, but like, you know me, I'd love to talk to a graph all day. So how was that? Was that of interest? A bit of a cook's tour? Was that all right? Any comments? Any comments or questions?
For me, I think for Graham, where you're going to next, like what is the project involve, and I guess the different steps. So you talked about July being at one site. So I guess that's probably coming up, but yeah, just in your past content, I thought that was useful introduction. So thank you.
Yeah. So just so that you sort of know that it's peer reviewed, science based, and then but really basically up that real strong. So we're looking at running a couple of days. So like
yeah, say bye.
I understand.
There's too much trauma in the background, and I'm
I still remember. So.
I thought they might cooperate, but it's not working.
Oh, thanks, Erica. We'll send you the recording.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and Jody will send you a copy as well. So
okay, thanks.
Yeah, see ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so what we'll talk about is a couple of days at Evandale. So or there, but I'm really that this is about outcomes. So everything we do is about outcomes. So if you come for a day or half a day, you can only do as long as you can demonstrate that you know what we're talking about. That's sort of like thanks, David. I'll come back to that. I just think that that's the key. So I know, like, if I was going to this, I might be able to make one of the 2 days or 2 of the days, or I might do one day and then go, oh, I'm coming tomorrow. That was great. That sort of thing. So that's the sort of that first time commitment. If you're interested, we'll probably send out the links to all the LFA manuals and recommended reading straight away, just so that people can start to look at it and start to think about it. And then it'll be sort of that self-paced. So really, our outcome is not to get free helpers. Our outcome is to make sure that you can do landscape function assessments, as well as we have a simpler managed one that we use, like farmers use on a biannual basis, so that they know how to correct their management, and just so that you've got those skills. That's our main thing. But we think that there would need to be some practical component of that. Then you could either come to the workshops on the 3 farms or one of those, so but we're really open to negotiation on how that works for people and what's going to be required. But really, just to be able to sort of demonstrate that you can do this, and that you've worked with us. We've found the only way that you pick up this is actually sort of doing it. So when we started these projects, so Celia used a pencil for me, and then why did you call it that? Why didn't you call it this? All that type of stuff as you go. And then eventually now Celia does them by herself. So we're just trying to formalize that a little, making sure I'll have to get you to answer some of those questions. So
sure.
Yeah, so any more for me on that? So was that okay, right?
Yeah. Well, just to answer a couple of these questions, they're in the chat about being in a particular geographical area or only in the east of Tasmania. the project sites that we've got at the moment are Justin's place at Toledo in the northeast, up near Derby, Branksholme area. The second site's at Evandale on the Nile Road, and the third site is at Jericho. So that's just where they are this particular time, with sheep and beef. So yeah, the webinars, of course, will be online, but that doesn't, I mean, that will build your knowledge, but not your skills in monitoring. So yeah. That is
fixed to droughty, more droughty sort of areas. So I'm not sure that Toledo's all that droughty, but yeah, it does have periods of lower rainfall.
Yeah, because it is a drought resilience hub project, but yeah, so that's why we've chosen those areas. Yeah, any other questions at all?
Just on that, in terms of, say if we do go, oh, sorry, I'll skip. I'll wait.
No, you
Yeah,
go. It's all right.
Yeah, you go
Okay.
first. Right? Yep.
I guess the question was, Narissa or me?
Ray, you go.
Okay.
No,
Apologies.
it's a time lag.
In terms of, yeah, so we'll be going to one or two or three of those sites. Are you expecting us to then go back to our own properties and do the same sort of analysis at our place? And do we need, like, I guess, any tools or analysis to do, or is it all just observational? And I guess you'll take us through that process to understand infiltration and how to do that and the different tests. So I was just wondering, is there any physical things that we need to purchase to enable to do it ourselves?
The tools required are really very straightforward. So we run a transect. So it's on like a 30-meter long tape measure. And then we typically use like surveyor's flags, but anything will work, so because you then go down there and divide it up into, dense perennial patches and sparse perennial patches. And, you look for 3 repeats. So you might have to go further than 30 meters, or it could be slightly less. So, and after that, it's a folder with printed out forms, and away you go. We want to get the forms onto the phones, but we haven't. I've just been doing natural capital accounting for farming for the future, and they were using the iAuditor safety app modified to do that. So that's what we'd like to do, but at the moment it's just a clipboard and a form, and you need a builder's tape measure to measure out to the basal areas so that you get the range, and so you can calculate the density per hectare. So a lot of it's very simple. We'll be providing you with the Excels so that you can calculate it. So it'd be great, Ray, if you could then say, I did this, I scored it like that, especially if you can't get to too many, so that it's not getting, you're not necessarily getting it embedded by being with us. If you could just send photos and say, this is what I called it, what do you think? So, and the idea is just to improve everyone's skills. So
your repetition is what embeds it. It certainly was for me. Just doing it, and then doing it by yourself was also valuable as well. So going home and practicing on your own paddocks or on the local park or wherever. So Narissa, you had a question?
And then phone a friend, I remember.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I was just wondering what the physical participation is, because I'll be traveling interstate. So just wondering how many farm visits and workshops and the like will be that will require participation at.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's you go.
Sorry, I was thinking there was lots of things there, Narissa. So I'm managing a farm down at East Gippsland, if that was easier.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. sort of, yeah, that'd work. I have a new livestock manager that I need to train up. That, you know, maybe I was doing all that. I was combining things, and, you know, how could we do that? So, so it would be nice to sort of get there, but if it was hard or not possible, we could design it to so that, you know, we either did it sort of. Are you on some land, Marissa, or?
No, I'm working on
Well,
one on some,
yeah,
but
down here, so we've got, yeah, we're demonstrating the grazing, the safe to fail trials, the monitoring and all that. So, yeah, so we could work something out like that. We're also running some training. So I've forgotten when it is, the start of August. So, you know, something like that might work. So, yeah, but yeah, we're happy to sort of work with people. Yeah.
Whatever it takes to make it work, Marissa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gippsland's achievable too, and Tassie is too. So yeah.
Definitely.
Any excuse.
It's a great place, that's for sure.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yes. So the time frame that we're looking at the moment is that the first lot of monitoring will be in July, the week of the 17th July, that Graham will be doing at Evandale. The Jericho and Toledo has been done already, but the Evandale one, they're actually expanding their trial sites, so that's there's quite a bit of practice that there will be there. What did we work out, Graham? It was about 7, 8, 9 LFAs to do.
Yeah, there was quite a lot. So.
There was quite a lot, yeah. So that will be really a good
like
practice.
Yeah, it'd be like 3 days if 3 days if I was just doing it sort of by myself, really. So
yeah, there's a bit of hands and knees work and getting up and getting down and grabbing your clipboard that's blown away, and yeah, so it's it does take time when you do it by yourself. Yeah. So the next event is a series of workshops. There'll be 3. We'll put them all in the same week, and they'll be in October. I'm actually heading off on Saturday on a Churchill Fellowship, so I won't be there for July, but I'll be back in time for the October events, which we haven't set a date for, but I'm thinking mid-July, Graham, mid to late July.
October?
I mean mid to late October, yep.
Yeah.
So I'm back on the 2nd of October, so.
Might have to write that one in.
Yeah. Then there'll be a biological. We'll do the landscape function analysis that Graham's described, and then there's also a biological monitoring system that we do. It's basically a tool for farmers to actually just. It involves throwing a dart and recording what you see around it. There's a bit of measuring the size of the basal areas of the perennial plants, that sort of thing, but it's much less complex, and it's much quicker and simpler to do, and it's a really good management tool for farmers to check which way their management is taking the soil surface. And then there'll be a full monitoring again at the end of the project. So and then after the so that will be this time next year, basically, for that full monitoring again. So there'll be a repetition to actually embed that experience and learning more. There'll also be webinars following on from the workshop in October. There's something like 23 of them, something like that. So yes, so they'll be weekly. Were you thinking, Graham, or fortnightly?
Yeah, I was thinking fortnightly, but we might see an adjust. Yep. During COVID, I found that I started with monthly, and that didn't work at all. It was like restarting every month. Then I went to fortnightly, and then reluctantly I ended up doing weekly because people actually stay engaged. So yeah, so probably weekly. So.
Yeah, it's yeah. So that's about the structure of it. Were there
You got a
any
question, Tom? Or
Yeah, I do actually, Graham. And for both yourself and Cecilia, how extensive does your knowledge have to be of identifying the grasses, legumes, and forbs?
yeah.
do you know where mine was?
No.
Zero.
Okay, that's about where mine's at.
Yeah. So we'll do a bit of that, Tom. I managed the Native Grass Association that was run out in New South Wales, and like I was a real from southwest Victoria, farm there near Hamilton, sort of between Hamilton and Port Fairy, and so I knew perennial ryegrass, cocksfoot, phalaris, and occasionally could do tall fescue or something. And next minute I'm running the Native Grass Association in New South Wales. There was thousands of 400 perennials that most of the people up there could identify. And I'm going, whoa. So yeah, so we'll do enough so that the key is knowing that it's a perennial and probably that it's palatable, is sort of about as far as you need to go. And then but what I find is that transfers quite easily and you do one at a time. And then the way I found to do it was to have a simple key and go, I think that's cocksfoot. Okay, I'll check, and how you do that. So yeah, so that won't be a thing. We just call everything else annuals. So you won't have to worry about all the forbs and stuff like that. So just stick them in that big group. So yeah, we'll do some of that as well. Yeah, no, your knowledge will be fine. So
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I definitely want to increase it. I just look, I've grown up there just all grasses, and it's like, no, they're not all just grasses. So
Yeah. NRM South does have a resource on their website, and it's called something or other. I can't remember, but it's basically a booklet on with pictures, like drawn pictures of common grasses of Tasmania or something like that. It was called. So
I've got that one. Still working my way through it.
Yeah. So
there's nothing like walking out into it. And what I do is I explain that my first trigger is colour. So, and then I go, I think it's that. Then I go and look at it. If that one doesn't have a seed head, I'll take a leaf off it and take it to one that's got an old seed head. And then you can go, okay, I've got it. So some of those little tricks that you just go, oh, that makes it easier. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, any other questions at all? It's yeah, we sort of hit our time. We said we'd be 45 minutes and we're about that now. So I can send the recording out to everybody.
Yeah. So did you have one, Ray?
I just had a quick one. So it sounds like we've got July potentially at Avondale, and then not much until October. So it's sounding like October's sort of the primary period, and then the 23 sessions after that. So is that the general structure that you're seeing? And then at the end, June next year, similarly, there's another opportunity to do the monitoring again on those 3 sites. So is that's generally what the core structure is, or the opportunity, I guess? Is that how you envisage it?
Yes, there'll be. Sorry. There'll be one biological monitoring in the middle there somewhere around, the halfway point. I'll go back and anybody's welcome to come along, and Graham won't be over for that one, I don't expect, but any of you are welcome to come along and tag along and throw darts with me. And so, yeah, that's what we do, throw a dart and then measure around that bit.
So the reason we weren't starting the webinars till then is because it's also for all the farmers, not just for the people doing the training. But we could do things, Ray, like if you wanted to do one at home and send the photos, and we could do like a round robin email or something. And then if there was enough interest, like I'd be happy to jump on and do a webinar or something. So Yeah.
Or even just just sending through a few resources that I could read before we go out to Evandale, potentially in July, just so that's my feeling anyway, just so I've got a little bit of background or understanding of what we're trying to achieve. I think your introduction there about the different indexes or the different things that we're going to be looking at, it's just a bit more background reading into regenerative agriculture and where we're sort of going.
Yeah, for sure. And so I'd envision that sort of going through the LFA manual and some of these materials would be the landscape function analysis manual, would be a big step by the time we get together. But we'll also send the biological monitoring, because I'll cover off on that as well while we're there. And then the corrective action and things like that, just so it's not first blush when you get to Evandale, if you come to Evandale. Yeah, I agree. There's probably too much material in it. I was just thinking there's a lot of stuff. So what is it you need to know for that is what I'll focus on. So very good.
Yep, coolies.
Okie dokie.
Anything further?
Anyone?
No. All right. Well, I'll email out the recording and the pre-reading type stuff, Graham.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Yeah, so I'll do that in the next day or so. So yeah, before I get on the plane.
Nice.
Yeah. So
It'll all be easy once you get on the plane. So.
Sleep. Yeah. Cool.
Oh, good to see you all. Nice to meet you, and look
Yeah.
forward to July. So it'll have warmed up by then at Evandale, won't it? So.
The wettest month, July.
Oh, right.
Coldest month is, but I do have waterproof paper.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So since I've bought it, it hasn't rained on any of my monitoring. So that's Murphy's Law, isn't it? So yeah, but you've got to use a pencil, not a pen. Cool.
I have to say, from prior experience, it's great stuff. We used to use it in surveying. So
Oh, fantastic.
I did buy it from a surveying firm along with the tags, the prospecting tags that they're called to mark things. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Fantastic.
Coolies.
Well,
All right.
I hope that was okay and gave you a glimpse. So we're happy to work with people is what we were trying to get through as well. I hope we've done that. So
Lovely.
excellent.
All right.
Okie dokie. Thanks everyone.
We'll see you again.
Bye bye.